Jennifer was only 25 years old, yet the whole village knew her name. She was the pride of her parents, Mr. Obina and Mrs. Florence. Her father, Obina, was a hard-working carpenter, the type of man who could shape a rough piece of wood into something beautiful and lasting. His workshop stood at the edge of the village square, filled with the smell of fresh sawdust and varnish. He didn't earn much, but he earned enough to put food on the table. Her mother, Florence, was a trader at the village market. Every morning before the cock crowed, she would carry baskets of yam, gari, pepper, and vegetables to her small wooden stall. She was a woman of strong hands and a stronger spirit. Even though she was always tired, she wore her smiles like a garment, and her words carried wisdom. Together, Obina and Florence had built a life of quiet dignity. They didn't have riches, but they had peace. And in the center of that peace was Jennifer. Jennifer was the type of daughter every mother prayed for. She was decent, respectful, and obedient. If you looked for her, you would either find her at the market, helping her mother measure gari into bowls for customers, or at home, sweeping the compound until it shone. Sometimes she would be by the fire, stirring a pot of soup with the aroma drifting across the neighborhood. Other times, she was bent over the stream, washing clothes with such care that even the older women praised her neatness. Jennifer's beauty was not just in her face, it was in her character. She was tall and graceful, with skin as smooth as new palm oil. Her eyes were calm, and her smile could light up even the weariest heart. Yet what made her stand out was her humility. She never walked with pride, never raised her voice in disrespect. She did not keep friends. Her mother always warned her, bad friends can destroy a good future. And Jennifer listened. Many girls her age spent their days gossiping by the roadside or chasing after young men from the neighboring villages, but Jennifer never joined them. She never stayed out late, and she never looked for trouble. Her life was simple, almost predictable. The sun rose, she worked. The sun set, she rested. And through it all, her heart remained pure. The women in the village used her as an example. They would point at her and tell their children, "Learn from Jennifer. Look how she respects her parents. Look how she behaves herself. If you want to have peace, be like her." Even the elders of the village spoke highly of her. To them, Jennifer was not just Obina's daughter, but the jewel of the entire community. But life is like a river. It looks calm on the surface, yet deep waters hide unseen currents. Nobody knew that behind Jennifer's innocence, life was preparing a heavy secret, a secret that would test her strength, her character, and everything she believed. The village saw her as perfect, untouchable, but fate was quietly writing a story for her, one that would shake the very ground she walked on. The evening breeze whistled softly through the open windows as Florence and Obina finished their dinner. The sky was painted with shades of purple and gold. Florence sat quietly for a while, her hands folded neatly on her lap. Then she looked at her husband and spoke with a gentle voice. "My husband, I have been thinking." Obina lifted his eyes from the wooden cup of water in his hand. "What is it, Florence?" She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I think me and your daughter should travel to my mother's village. Mama is old now, and I feel she should see her granddaughter. Jennifer has grown into a fine young lady, and Mama deserves that joy." Obina rubbed his chin thoughtfully. He respected his mother-in-law deeply. You are right. It has been a long time since we visited her. Jennifer should spend time with her grandmother while she is still strong enough to talk and share her wisdom." The next morning, their small household was filled with excitement. Jennifer packed her clothes neatly into a small box, while Florence arranged food items, yams, dried fish, palm oil, and groundnut, so they could bless Grandma with gifts from their home. The journey to the village took several hours. They passed through winding paths, tall palm trees, and streams that sparkled under the sun. Jennifer's laughter filled the air as she pointed out monkeys swinging from trees and women returning from the market with baskets on their heads. When they finally arrived at Grandma's hut, the old woman came out slowly, leaning on her walking stick. Her wrinkled face broke into a wide smile as she saw them. "My children!" she exclaimed, her voice shaky but filled with joy. "Florence, Jennifer, my precious granddaughter." Jennifer rushed into her grandmother's arms. "Grandma!" she cried, holding her tightly. The old woman's eyes watered as she kissed Jennifer's forehead. They spent 2 wonderful weeks in the village. Jennifer woke up early every morning to fetch water with other young girls. She helped her grandmother pound yam, sweep the compound, and feed the chickens. At night, they all sat outside under the moonlight as Grandma told old stories of tortoises, spirits of the forest, and the wisdom of the ancestors. Jennifer listened with wide, eager eyes, her heart soaking up every word. But the joyful days soon passed, and it was time to return home. The family packed their things, ready for the journey back. When Florence got home, Obina noticed his daughter did not return with Florence. Obina asked, "Florence, where is my daughter? Why did you not return with her?" Florence avoided his eyes and gave a soft smile. "Obina, I asked Jennifer to stay behind with Mama. You know, she is old and weak. She needs someone to help her with farm work and house chores. Jennifer is strong and capable. She agreed to stay, but only for 1 year. After that, she will come back to us." Obina's face tightened. "Florence, you should have told me before making such a decision. She is our only daughter. How could you leave her without discussing it with me?" Florence placed her hand gently on his arm. "I am sorry, my husband, but Mama needs her more now. Do not worry. Jennifer is safe. We will talk to her from time to time. Mama will take good care of her." Obina sighed heavily. His heart was restless, but he loved his wife and did not want to quarrel. More than that, he loved Jennifer too deeply to risk making a scene that would hurt her. He looked away, his chest rising and falling with emotion. "I pray this is the right thing," he muttered. Florence nodded quietly. "It is, my husband. It is only for 1 year." Obina said no more, but deep within him, a father's heart worried. 9 months later, long after Jennifer's stay in the village, Florence received a strange phone call very early in the morning. The sun had not yet risen, and the compound was still wrapped in silence. Obina was half asleep when he heard his wife's hurried footsteps. Florence picked up her small traveling bag and began throwing clothes into it. Her hands shook, her eyes restless, as though she was running away from something. Obina sat up on the bed, confused. "Where are you going this early?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. "My mother called me," Florence replied without looking at him. "Something happened. Don't worry, I will explain later." Her voice was sharp, her movements restless. Before Obina could ask more questions, she tied her headscarf, lifted the bag, and hurried out of the house. Obina stood at the doorway, watching his wife disappear down the dusty road. His heart felt heavy. Something about her departure did not sit right with him. Hours later, Obina's phone rang. He answered quickly. "Florence, where are you now? What is going on?" "My mother is sick," Florence said softly. "I must stay with her a little longer. Don't worry yourself. I will take care of things here. When she is better, I will come back with Jennifer." The call ended before Obina could speak further. He dropped the phone slowly, his eyes clouded with worry. Days turned into weeks, weeks stretched into months. 3 whole months passed without the laughter of Jennifer in the house. Obina's evenings felt empty. He missed his daughter's cheerful voice, the way she always ran to greet him whenever he returned from work. Finally, one late afternoon, Florence and Jennifer returned. Obina was overjoyed to see them. He ran out to welcome them, his heart pounding with relief. "Ah, my daughter!" he shouted, stretching his arms wide. Jennifer walked slowly into his embrace, but something was wrong. As Obina held her, he felt the weight of her body press against him differently. She was fuller, heavier. When he looked closely, he noticed her cheeks had grown round, and her eyes carried a strange tiredness. Her steps were slow, almost as if her legs had no strength. "What is wrong with my daughter?" Obina asked, frowning deeply. "Why does she look like this?" Florence quickly placed a hand on his shoulder. "It is nothing," she answered with a forced smile. "It's just farm work. You know she is not used to heavy labor. That is why she is tired. With good food and rest, she will be fine." Jennifer lowered her head, avoiding her father's eyes. She clutched her mother's hand tightly, as though she was hiding behind her. Obina studied her face for a while, his heart squeezed with worry. He wanted to question further, but he trusted his wife's words. If Florence said it was farm work, then maybe it was farm work. Still, in the corners of his heart, unease remained like a shadow that refused to fade. That night, as the family sat together for dinner, Obina noticed Jennifer eating slowly, pushing the food around her plate. Her eyes looked heavy, and her shoulders seemed burdened with a silent weight. He swallowed hard and thought to himself, "Something is not right. My daughter has changed, but what is the cause?" And so, though he said nothing, Obina's heart remained restless. A hidden change had taken place, one that would soon shake the peace of their home. Time went by slowly, but Obina noticed that Florence's behavior was no longer the same. The once open and cheerful wife he knew had become secretive. Every evening after dinner, she would quietly slip out to the backyard with her phone pressed to her ear. Her voice would become low and hurried, and if Obina happened to walk close, she would quickly end the call and pretend to be busy with something else. One evening, he decided to ask. "Florence," he said, his eyes fixed at her, "who was that on the phone?" She gave a small laugh, pretending to be unbothered. "It's just one of my customers, someone who wants to buy foodstuff from me." But her eyes did not meet his, and her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her wrapper. Obina's heart was not at peace. He trusted his wife, but something about her tone and sudden secrecy made him unrestless. At night, when she slept, he would lie awake staring at the ceiling, asking himself endless questions. What customer calls at odd hours? And why does she hide her phone from me? He tried to brush the thoughts aside, but the more he ignored them, the stronger they grew. Months passed, and life continued with its usual rhythm, yet Florence's movements remained strange. Sometimes she would travel suddenly to the market, returning late in the evening, looking tired and withdrawn. Other times she would excuse herself from family gatherings, stepping outside to answer urgent calls. Obina felt a wall growing between them, but he chose silence. He did not want to accuse her without proof. A year later, Florence made another decision. "Obina," she said one morning, "I want to travel to the village with Jennifer again. My mother needs to see her granddaughter. It has been a long time." Obina hesitated. The last time Florence traveled with their daughter, she had returned with excuses and strange stories. But his love for Florence and his trust in her words made him agree. "Fine," he said, slowly. "But please, don't stay too long." Florence nodded. "Just a few weeks," she promised. When they returned, Obina's eyes widened in shock. Jennifer had changed again. Her once slim figure had taken a new shape, as if her body was hiding a secret of its own. She avoided his gaze, often keeping to her room. Florence, on the other hand, acted as if everything was normal, cooking meals and chatting as though nothing had happened. But Obina could not pretend. He watched his daughter carefully, confusion eating at his soul. "What is happening to Jennifer?" he whispered to himself one night. "Why does she look different every time she returns from the village?" His mind raced with fear and suspicion. He knew something was deeply wrong. Florence was hiding a secret from him, a secret that was slowly tearing his family apart. In another part of the village, George, a 30-year-old man who worked in the city, returned home to visit his parents, Mr. James and Mrs. Mercy. George was their only son, and they often worried about him. Though he had a good job and lived comfortably in the city, he was still unmarried. Every time George came home, his parents reminded him of the importance of marriage. This time was no different. One evening, as the family sat outside under the moonlight, his mother, Mrs. Mercy, began the familiar talk. "George, my son, you are not getting any younger," she said softly. "We have been praying for you to find a good wife." His father, Mr. James, added, "We know city girls are everywhere, but many of them don't respect tradition. They won't understand your roots. But here in this village, there is a girl who is like a shining star. Her name is Jennifer." Mrs. Mercy smiled warmly. She is a good girl, decent, humble, and respectful. She helps her parents, she greets everyone politely, and the elders bless her wherever she goes. "My son, she is the kind of wife you need." George leaned back in his chair, thinking, "You have always spoken of her. If she is truly as you describe, then I must meet her with my own eyes." The next day, George and his parents dressed neatly and went to visit Jennifer's family. Mr. Obina, Jennifer's father, welcomed them warmly. Florence, her mother, served them drinks and kola nut as tradition demanded. Jennifer entered the room quietly, carrying a tray. She greeted George and his parents with deep respect, bowing slightly as she placed the tray on the table. Her voice was calm and gentle. "Welcome, my elders. You are highly honored in our home." George could not take his eyes off her. She was not only beautiful, but there was a certain grace in her manner, humility mixed with quiet confidence. Later that evening, as they walked home, George turned to his parents. "Father, Mother, you were right. Jennifer is everything you said and more. I have decided I want to marry her." His parents exchanged a glance of joy. Mr. James patted his son's shoulder. "You have chosen wisely, my son. She will bring peace to your home." Because George only had 2 weeks of leave from his company, the families wasted no time. They met and agreed that both the church wedding and traditional wedding would be held on the same day. Though it was unusual, both families supported the idea. The news spread quickly through the village. People clapped their hands in excitement. Women began to plan the songs they would sing, while the men spoke of the palm wine that would flow. Children ran through the streets shouting, "Jennifer is getting married! Jennifer is getting married!" On the day of the introduction, the elders blessed the union. They prayed for peace, children, and prosperity for George and Jennifer. Everyone said, "Jennifer is a blessing to her parents. What a lucky child." The joy was so great that the entire village joined in celebration. Some women danced in circles, their wrappers tied tightly around their waists, while the men played drums and flutes. Old and young came together, for it was not just a family celebration, but a village honor. Obina's heart swelled with pride as he watched his daughter's name praised everywhere. Florence smiled brightly, but deep within her heart, a shadow still lingered, a secret only she knew. The long-awaited day finally arrived. The whole village was alive with music, laughter, and celebration. Friends, neighbors, and relatives had gathered from near and far to witness the union of Jennifer and George. The church was beautifully decorated with white flowers tied neatly to the pews. Jennifer walked down the aisle in her flowing white gown, looking like an angel. George stood tall at the altar, his heart filled with pride and joy. The pastor prayed, blessed the couple, and pronounced them husband and wife. The crowd clapped and shouted with excitement, drums rolled, and songs of praise filled the air. After the church service, everyone moved to Jennifer's family compound, where the traditional marriage was to take place. Colorful wrappers, beaded necklaces, and head ties filled the compound with a festival of colors. The aroma of roasted meat and spicy soup drifted across the air as women busied themselves in the kitchen. Young men served drinks, and children ran around with laughter. But in the middle of all the merriment, something unusual was happening. Jennifer seemed restless. She smiled when people looked at her, but her eyes were troubled. Again and again, she left the gathering with her mother, Florence. The two of them whispered in low tones, and sometimes Florence received phone calls, which she quickly hid. Each time they returned with forced smiles, pretending as if everything was fine. At first, George tried to ignore it. He told himself, maybe they are just handling some family matters. After all, a wedding day can be stressful. But as time went on, his uneasiness grew. Why would his bride, on her wedding day, disappear from the celebration so often? Why did her mother look so nervous each time they returned? The final straw came when George noticed Jennifer and Florence sneak quietly toward the backyard again. This time, Jennifer's steps were hurried, her gown brushing against the dusty ground. Florence held her daughter's hand tightly, as if guiding her away from watchful eyes. George's heart began to pound. Something was not right. Without telling anyone, he followed them quietly. He kept a distance, careful not to make any sound, as he moved behind the mango trees that bordered the compound. The laughter of the guests became faint in the background. Now he could hear the low, urgent voices of the two women. He stepped closer. What he heard froze his heart. Jennifer's voice trembled as she spoke. "Mama, I can't keep this secret anymore. George deserves to know the truth." Florence grabbed her hand tightly. "No, you must not say anything now. If he finds out today, everything will be ruined. Do you want to bring shame to us? Do you want the whole village to mock our family?" Jennifer's face was pale, tears shining in her eyes. She shook her head slowly. "But Mama, how long can I hide it? What if he finds out later? What will happen then?" George's breath caught in his throat. His palms grew cold. His bride was hiding something so big that her mother begged her to bury it even on their wedding day. He stood frozen, his world spinning. He wanted to step out and confront them, but his legs felt heavy. Instead, he stayed hidden, listening, his heart tearing with fear of what secret might destroy the joy of his wedding day. Jennifer was speaking on the phone, her voice low but urgent. Her hands trembled as she clutched the small device close to her lips. "Grandma, please take care of them for me," she whispered. "Take him to the village clinic. Today is my wedding day. I don't want my husband to know I have children. Don't worry, I will give my mother money to bring for you." Her eyes darted around to make sure no one was listening. She ended the call quickly, wiping the sweat that had gathered on her forehead. But as she turned, her heart froze. George was standing right behind her. His eyes were dark, his face stiff, and his lips pressed tightly together. Her face turned pale. "George, I can explain." But George didn't wait for her explanation. He shook his head slowly, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. Without a word, he turned and walked away quickly, his footsteps hard against the ground. Jennifer stretched her hand toward him, tears already filling her eyes. "Please, wait," she cried, but her voice was swallowed by the loud music from the marriage ground. George pushed his way through the crowd. His mind was on fire. How could the woman he trusted, the woman his parents approved of, the woman he was ready to call his wife, hide something so big? When he reached the musician, his anger could no longer be contained. "Stop the music!" he shouted. His voice thundered above the instruments. The drums fell silent. The dancers froze. The crowd turned toward him in shock. George's hand trembled as he pointed at Jennifer, who was just entering the compound again with her mother. "I just heard your daughter telling someone to take care of her children," he declared. His voice cracked with pain. "What is happening here?" The crowd erupted with murmurs. "Children? Which children? Did we hear him well?" Obina, Jennifer's father, stepped forward, confusion written all over his face. "Jennifer, what is this man saying? Speak now. Which children is he talking about?" Jennifer's knees gave way beneath her. She fell heavily on the ground, her whole body shaking. Her lips quivered as tears streamed down her cheeks. "Daddy, it is true," she confessed in a trembling voice. "I have children, 4 of them. They're with Grandma in the village." The ground shook with silence. The air became heavy, and every eye was fixed on her. The women in the crowd gasped and covered their mouths. The men shook their heads in disbelief. Children? 4? How could this be? Obina staggered back as though lightning had struck him. He looked at his wife, Florence, whose face was buried in her palms. "Florence," he roared, "you knew this, and you hid it from me?" Florence broke down in tears, her body trembling. She could not look her husband in the eye. George's parents, Mr. James and Mrs. Mercy, exchanged a look of horror. They had insisted on this marriage, believing Jennifer was pure and innocent. Mercy clutched her wrapper tightly. "This is a disgrace, a total disgrace." Jennifer crawled on her knees toward George, her voice breaking. "Please forgive me. I was afraid. I thought if you knew, you would never accept me. I made mistakes in the past, but I swear I love you." But George's heart was too heavy. His hands trembled as he stepped back from her. "You should have told me the truth from the beginning. Love without truth is nothing." The villagers began to murmur louder, their voices rising like a storm. "So all this time, and we thought she was the jewel of the village. 4 children, hidden. Ha!" Jennifer's sobs filled the air, but no one moved to comfort her. The truth had exploded like fire in dry grass, and nothing could put it out. The compound was silent except for Florence's sobbing. Everyone's eyes were fixed on her as she fell to her knees, her wrapper slipping from her shoulder. "Please, my husband, please, my people, forgive us," she cried, her voice shaking. "I thought we could cover this forever. I thought nobody would ever know." Obina's chest rose and fell heavily. His voice thundered. "What are you talking about, Florence? What have you done?" Florence wiped her tears with trembling hands. "It started years ago. When Jennifer went to stay with my mother in the village, one day she fell sick. I rushed her to the hospital. The doctor examined her, and then he told me something that shook my soul. He said Jennifer was pregnant." The crowd gasped. Some covered their mouths, others whispered in disbelief. Florence continued, her voice breaking. I could not believe it. I asked her who was responsible. At first, she refused to speak, but when I pressed her, she confessed. She said it was one of my customers. I used to send her to him to collect money for me. She told me that each time she went, he gave her drinks. She would drink, and then she would sleep off. By the time she woke, he had already used her. Jennifer bowed her head in shame. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she said nothing. I begged her to stop going there, Florence cried louder. I warned her never to step foot near that man again. But one day he tricked her again, and that was how she got pregnant. The crowd murmured louder now, their shock turning into anger. Obina staggered back, as if the ground beneath him was collapsing. Pregnant? My daughter? And you hid this from me? His eyes burned with pain. Florence nodded weakly. Yes, she gave birth to 2 sets of twins, 4 children in total. I could not bring the shame home. Everyone in this village respected Jennifer. Everyone saw her as a jewel, a good girl. I thought if people knew, our family name would be destroyed. So I told my mother to keep the secret. She raised the children in silence. I thought it would never come to light. The villagers began to shake their heads, muttering. Some pitied Florence, but many hissed in anger. George, who had been standing stiffly, suddenly stepped forward, his eyes blazing with rage. He pointed at Jennifer. So this is the truth. All this time, you deceived me? You and your mother built your beauty and respect on lies? Jennifer tried to speak, but her voice cracked. George, please, I never wanted this. Silence, George shouted, cutting her off. Do you think I will marry a woman with 4 children hidden in the shadows? A woman who cannot even speak the truth? A family that hides disgrace under fine clothes? Obina held his head in his hands, groaning in agony. Chai, Maichi, Florence, what have you done to me? What have you done to this family? George's face hardened. He shook his head slowly, as though every word carried a knife. I cannot marry a woman who kept such a secret. This is the end. The day I marry her is the day I divorce. Never. Without another word, he stormed toward his car. The slam of the car door echoed like thunder. Within seconds, the engine roared and George sped away, leaving dust rising behind him. The villagers broke into cries and shouts. Some blamed Jennifer. Others blamed Florence, while a few pitied Obina, who sank to his knees in despair. Jennifer collapsed to the ground, weeping bitterly. Mama, why didn't you tell the truth earlier? Why did you let it come to this? Florence could not answer. Her tears flowed freely, and her body shook as though the weight of years of hidden sin had finally crushed her spirit. And there, in the midst of the crowd, a once proud family stood shattered, broken by secrets, shame, and betrayal. From that day, Jennifer and her mother could no longer walk freely in the village. The villagers who once praised Jennifer now turned their faces away whenever she passed. Children whispered behind her back. Young men who had once admired her now mocked her in secret. The same people who once called her the jewel of the village refused to even mention her name. Her story had become a warning to others, and her presence brought silence wherever she appeared. Florence, too, was not spared. Women at the market no longer greeted her warmly. They bought from other traders instead. Whenever she tried to join a conversation, the women would suddenly fall quiet, then laugh when she walked away. Florence felt her world collapsing around her. Obina, who had always been a strong and hardworking man, could not bear the shame that surrounded his family. His heart grew heavy, his mind troubled, and soon his body followed. He became sick, too weak to go to the workshop, too weak to provide for his family. Jennifer wept when she saw her father lying helpless on the bed. She held his hand and cried, "Papa, forgive me. I never meant to bring shame to you." But Obinna, with tears rolling down his cheeks, could only shake his head. His strength failed day by day. His sickness grew worse until one quiet morning he breathed his last. The cry that rose from their compound that day was filled with pain and regret. Florence tore her clothes and fell to the ground, wailing. Jennifer screamed until her voice broke. But nothing could bring Obinna back. The man who once protected them was gone, leaving behind sorrow too deep for words. From then on, Florence and Jennifer lived in regret. The shame of their secret had destroyed their joy. The jewel of the village had fallen, not by the hands of enemies, but by the weight of secrets, too heavy to hide.